Hey, other Daniel. What's that? Oh, that? That's the Book of Infinite Horrors. Huh. Can I borrow it? If you can lift it. This looks like a job for Superman. Ha! Wasn't even that hard. Now, you might not be able to lift infinity. But he can. Or can he? That's the question I'd like to explore today. I mean, he can tow all the planets in the galaxy, lift the weight of the Earth for 5 days straight, and he can lift this thing. But can he lift literally everything else on top of that? Before we get started, just a little thing on power scaling and feats. Despite what someone might have told you on some versus battle community or some rando on Facebook would have you believe, there is no exact science to this sort of stuff. There is not a universal standard for what is and isn't accepted, so you might as well just check that at the door. That being said, I believe being logical and consistent is very important. Calling Naruto boundless just because you feel it in your heart, it's bound to get you laughed at. In my opinion, you should pick a standard and use that across the board, but that's just me. So what do I find important? For me, feats are king. What actually happens on the page is what matters most. Calcs can really help you with that because it can tell you just how powerful that is. Next in terms of importance for me is going to be character statements, what's actually being said in the story, because that's what's used to communicate to the reader, the stakes and the context of what's going on in the universe. And in last place is going to be Word of God, because, that's just something that should be used sparingly, only to kind of clarify what's going on. Now, we could sit here all day and talk about what the standards of evidence for a versus debate should be, but in my experience, that usually just leads to people talking past each other. So I'm going to tell you what mine are, and if you disagree, then we're already just not going to see eye to eye and you can move on. Or maybe you can just stick around and see if I can change your mind. I like to have between 3 and 5 examples of a character doing something before I'll accept it as a standard of strength for them. And I'd also really like to believe that if another author came in, they'd write the scene or the feat in a similar way. So where does that leave us with Big Blue lifting literally everything? Now, lucky for us, we have 4 different examples, also written by 4 different authors. So how about we take each one of these, put them under a microscope, and see how they stand up to scrutiny. First up is Superman, the Man of Steel, issues 99 and 100 by Mark Schultz, put out in the year 2000. In this story, technology left by Brainiac 13 creates an event that transforms into a tesseract, described as being infinite space inside finite space, otherwise known as a pocket dimension. Steel and Superman create a container to move the tesseract, and Superman does. Pretty clear cut, right? Well, I'll be honest, this one has a lot of problems for me. For starters, there's nothing really inside this space. It's just infinite nothing. This is evident when Superman has to bring material from his world inside of the Tesseract in order for it to build him a new fortress. The container just seems to be moving a portal around and not the infinite space itself. The best defense I can really give this one is Steel says only Superman can handle the door, but that's it. Maybe there's an author statement out there that makes the intent more clear, but for me, I find this feat to be dubious at best. So we got off to a little bit of a rough start. Not every feat is going to pan out. But from this point on, you're going to hear me being just a little bit more confident. Our next two were made famous in the infamous Goku vs. Superman 2, and let me tell you, they have been contentious for years, with debunk post after debunk post after debunk post. So let's dredge them up almost a decade later. Next up is 2003's JLA The Spectre Soul War by J.M. Demetis. I'm pretty sure you pronounced that name wrong. In this story, the Spectre comes to the Justice League for help combating the extra-dimensional entity, the Trans. One moment. Hey, other Daniel, is it too early for me to be canceled? We're just gonna go ahead and skip right over that hornet's nest then. Anyway, at one point in the story, the Spectre collapses and Superman and Wonder Woman have to lift him up until Kyle Rayner can make a place to put him. His body is described as being made up of eternity. So, what's it with this one? Let's talk about the debunks. Eternity isn't a measure of weight, but of time. Yep, not wrong. But I need y'all to understand that when you say this is what you look like. Your actually but is being pedantic. This is poetic language and the intent in the story seems pretty clear. The Spectre is constantly described as an avenger of God with near infinite power that completely dwarfs the rest of the Justice League. And that's not just something in this story, that's something that's kind of been the case throughout his entire continuity, that they do emphasize that in this story as well. So I really just don't have a problem with correlating the phrase eternity with what I think the author meant there. It's just something that's meant to say, it goes on forever, it's super heavy. Well, what about Wonder Woman and Kyle? Are you saying they're as strong as Superman? Wonder Woman and Green Lantern have been scaling to Superman for literal decades. Do I think they're an exact one-to-one? No, of course not. But in terms of what they can lift in a three-dimensional structure, yeah, I have zero problem believing that. Sorry. One of the most annoying vids on this subject came out right after Death Battle. Animation Rewind did their own Goku vs. Superman, sort of to serve as their own personal debunk, and they also tried to smugly debunk this feat by going, Green Lantern would also get an infinite strength feat from this, all with a fat little Green Lantern animation and everything. And you know what's real funny? I'm not the one implying that Green Lantern scales this way. The book is. The Batman himself says later in the story that Kyle's ring is the only thing that could keep the Spectre in check. I'm not going to list every one of Kyle's feats that could, support this, but it's right there in the story. The story itself is about the limitless bounds of the mind and imagination. Of course it would make a lantern look strong. This is all the author conveying intent. This is why it's important to actually read the stories you're talking about, and not just take someone's word for it, or look at screenshots on the internet. Because when you actually read the story, it puts the author's intent into context. Overall, I call this one acceptable. At the very least, I'd put it in the plausible category. It has some holes, and if it was by itself, I'd call it an outlier, but we ain't stopping there. The next one's a doozy. Third on the table is 2008's Final Crisis by Grant Morrison.
To be more precise, the Superman Beyond 3D tie-in comic.
Gonna be honest here, summarizing this wild story is kinda hard. Let's try anyway. After Lois Lane is injured, the Monitor Zilla Vola offers to take Clark to find the only thing in the multiverse that can save her. He joins Superman from other worlds on the Ultimate Thule, which eventually crash lands in Limbo, a place where forgotten stories go to die. There he finds a book of infinite pages, and with the help of Shazam, he lifts it up. In all of my history of versus debating, I have never seen a feat as scrutinized as this one. And it's not exactly hard to understand why, at least at the time. You know, Goku versus Superman 2's entire conclusion sort of hinged on this feat. So people were like, if I can just prove it, then it's wrong. Not that that really matters. I'm just trying to put things into context. I've been talking about this feat for a really long time. Superman never lifts the book. Okay, you're wrong. He's holding it right there on the page. Shazam mentions its weight and the feedback of the thing. When the book pushes them away, it only knocks Shazam out, implying Superman was the stronger end of that lift. He also doesn't view it as impossible to carry. He walks away thinking he just needs a little bit of help to carry infinity. Sometimes, people break this down and say, Superman didn't lift it, but Ultraman did. And okay, but Clark scales directly to Ultraman, right? The book doesn't even have infinite pages. In my view, the words on the page mean what they mean. It's called the book with infinite pages, contains every book possible, was going to be uploaded to the Thule with infinite memory. I'm sorry. This is an author repeatedly emphasizing what the thing is. But Ultraman read the ending. It can't be infinite. Okay. Now, that's a fair way to read things. It really is. I also think it's fair to just say Ultraman is wrong. The ending he read doesn't happen. Come on. That's because Superman changed the ending with the Miracle Machine. You know what, other Daniel? That's also a fair read, though it's never explicitly said in the story anywhere. For me, I just find it far more likely that it's one of two options. Either Ultraman's wrong, or B, we're dealing with realms of infinity, levels of infinity, if you will. DC does that a lot. Yeah, things could have a beginning and an end, but an infinite middle. I believe it was Dominus and Kismet at one point that had a conversation about something containing every possible even number, and something else would contain every possible odd number, and that would mean that both of them were infinite, but they were infinite in different ways. In this case, it's something that has infinite weight, but wouldn't carry over to other infinite realms. But, like I said, this is just one of those agree to disagree sorts of points. You can't use that feat because it takes place in Limbo, and that's a higher dimension. Now, try as I might, I have not been able to figure this one out. I believe this argument stems from boom tubes and how they change character sizes so they can fit in different realms. But I can't find a source that says Limbo exists like that, like it exists the same way that New Genesis does. It's most certainly a higher realm of existence. I just don't know if it changes the dimensionality or size of the people that end up there, or if it just sort of exists in this limbo state. I honestly just can't find the answer. So if you want to use this to debunk the feat or just not buy into it, all the power to you, because I really can't say much on it. If I wanted to offer a tepid defense to this, it would be that this only means that Superman, Ultraman, whoever, would be able to replicate the feat if they found a similarly sized object in their own world that was just sized down to their realm. But like I said, if this kills the feat for you, fair enough, because I don't know.
Finally, we find our way to the most recent instance of lifting it all, or at least the most recent one that I know about. Here we have Robert Venditti's Man of Tomorrow, Volume 1.
In this story, Superman lifts the heavens so that the Titan Atlas can go to his daughter's wedding. What a swell guy. And you know what, lifting the heavens, what does that even mean? Well, luckily, we have the writer to tell us everything. It means everything. At minimum, I take this to mean the infinite expanding universe. At maximum, it would mean Superman is lifting up more than just every story and stretching into all dimensionality of the DC multiverse. Which would sort of tie into him being, that cosmic linchpin of the DC multiverse, but that's an argument for a different day, I suppose.
But the author also said it was a metaphor. Are we really doing this again?
Alright, it is a metaphor. But metaphors are what things represent outside of their stories. The metaphor is that Superman holds these stories up, inspires people, that DC wouldn't exist without him. But in the story, the thing the metaphor represents still happens, and that thing is lifting the heavens. As for Venditti saying that it's just a metaphor, he's well within his right to say that. He did write the story after all. My only problem is that both of these quotes sort of come across as different camps of a versus community trying to fish for the answers they want. And really, that's super annoying. You see it on Twitter all the time. But even with this quote, what happened on the page still happened on the page. So if you throw both quotes away because they were both fished for, then you still have Superman lifting the heavens, which you can interpret in a myriad of ways. And if you keep both quotes, he still lifted the heavens, and in this case, it means literally everything because of the quote. So it's sort of a pick your poison sort of situation for the actualies.
But Atlas said to lift it with his heart, so it can't be a strength feat either. No, that's not in the story, like at all.
Superman shows up and asks, do we do a handoff? And Atlas says, take it not with your hands, take it with your heart. That's Superman accepting the burden. That's how he was handed the heavens. He accepted the responsibility. I got no clue where this argument has come from. That the heavens only weigh as much as Superman's heart, it's just not there. But let's play by those rules for 30 seconds. All that would mean is Superman's strength directly correlates to his heart. You really want to have that argument? 'Cause, sure, whole new video just on that. How strong Superman would be if his strength correlated directly to his heart and willpower.
Now, if you've watched my favorite Superman feats video, you know that lifting the heavens is one of my absolute favorites. And for me, of all the Infinity feats, this is probably the cleanest one. You have Superman lifting the object on his own for an extended length of time. The object is described pretty clearly, and if you really want to use it, you even kind of have an author statement to back it up, though maybe that part's a little dubious. And so here we are. Of the 4 feats we discussed, I dismissed one of them. Find one of them to be kind of plausible. And I actually think 2 of them hold up pretty well. Like I said before, whether you accept these feats or not is entirely up to you. I just wanted to explore them, put them into context, give you my reads on them, and give you my arguments for and kind of against them. I hope you had some fun along the way with that. And at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter because these aren't even Superman's best feats. Not even close. Heck, the Infinite Book feat from Final Crisis, I'd probably rank that like third or maybe even fourth in this book alone, let alone overall. But that's a story for another day. If you'd like to argue your own points, either for or against any of these, or have any requests, make sure to hit up them comments down below. And maybe like and subscribe along the way. Anyway, that's been Daniel with Truth and Justice and all of that nonsense. Catch you next time.